So today's video actually comes from a question from a channel member, and this member asks, I do have a question about people that are sensitive to L-methylfolate. I am one of those, so I actually do a folinic acid. Can you explain how that is different from a methylfolate and how your body uses it? Thank you. So if you would like to become a channel member and get your questions answered as a priority, it's only $4.99 a month. Just click that join button below. So are you like this channel member and you started a B complex or a methylfolate supplement and you suddenly felt more anxious, wired, or just off? Well, a lot of people are told that you have an MTHFR mutation, so you need to take methylfolate. But the truth is, not all folate is the same, and not everyone does best on the same form. And in some people, the wrong form or the wrong dose can actually make anxiety, insomnia, or histamine symptoms worse. So today, we're going to break down the differences between folic acid, folinic acid, and methylfolate, how they affect methylation in your genes, and when each one might make sense to use. So stay tuned. Hi, I'm Giselle Rosa, a board-certified psychiatric nurse practitioner and mental health coach, here to help you optimize mental health through genetics and integrative and functional medicine using a skills before pills approach. So let's start with a quick methylation refresher so all of the rest of this makes sense. And if you missed the video on methylation, I did a deep dive on methylation. It's called Fixing Mood at the Root. Please go ahead and check that out if you want a deeper dive. But this is just going to be an overview 101. So think of methylation as your body's on and off switch chemistry, where methyl groups are tiny carbon-hydrogen packages that help your body to make neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. They also help process histamine and detoxify certain chemicals or toxins, and even help break down hormones, as well as repair DNA and support brain health. It also helps to convert that homocysteine back into methionine so that you can make SAMe, which is your primary methyl donor. And folate lives right in the middle of that pathway. And so here's a simplified traffic flow where folate from food or supplements gets converted into THF, which is tetrahydrofolate. THF becomes 5,10-methylene THF. Then the enzyme MTHFR converts that into 5-MTHF, also called methylfolate, which is the active form of folate. Then methylfolate donates a methyl group to homocysteine using B12 and the enzyme MTR to make methionine and then SAMe. And there are key genes that touch this system. And these genes include DHR, which converts synthetic folic acid into usable folate, MTHFR, which converts that 5,10 THF into methylfolate, MTR and MTRR, which use B12 to recycle homocysteine back to methionine, and MTHFD1, which helps move folate around in the cycle. And then there are some downstream genes like COMT, MAOA, CBS, HNMT, and others that use methyl groups to process neurotransmitters and histamine. And different forms of folate will plug into different points in this pathway. And that's why one person feels calm and focused on a product, and another person feels like they just drank 6 espresso shots. So let's talk about the first type and most common, which is folic acid. Now, this is the one that most people know about. So folic acid is a fully oxidized synthetic form of folate. It's often used in fortified foods and most standard multivitamins and prenatal vitamins. It's very stable and cheap, which is why the food industry loves it. So, how does your body use folic acid? Well, folic acid doesn't go straight into that folate cycle. Your body has to convert it. And it uses that DHR or dihydrofolate reductase to convert folic acid into dihydrofolate, then into THF. Then from THF, it can enter the regular folate cycle and eventually become methylfolate. But here's the catch. Human DHFR is slow and easily saturated. especially at higher intakes. When intake is high, some folic acid remains unmetabolized in the bloodstream, and that's called unmetabolized folic acid, or UMFA. And this has been associated in some studies with competition with natural, reduced folates like methylfolate for certain transporters and binding proteins, and impaired 5-MTHF or active folate uptake into certain cells, and in some models, it's reduced movement of active folate across the blood cerebrospinal fluid barrier. And this is where that phrase that you may have heard of comes from, where folic acid blocks folate receptors. But at typical public health doses around 400 micrograms per day, folic acid still works even for people with MTHFR variants. And that's why it's still the standard for neural tube defect prevention. You see, big population studies do show that people with MTHFR polymorphisms can still raise folate levels and reduce neural tube defects with folic acid. But the concern is more about high-dose, long-term folic acid from multiple supplements and fortified foods, especially when it leaves a lot of unmetabolized folic acid in circulation. And unfortunately, most people are getting folic acid from fortified foods. Then they add in a folic acid multivitamin, which can create too much of this unmetabolized folic acid, which can potentially block your folate absorption. And now MTHFR reduces this enzyme's activity, especially in TT carriers, and is associated with higher homocysteine and lower methylfolate unless folate intake is adequate. So when folic acid might make sense is following maybe prenatal guidelines if you're pregnant or trying to conceive, unless your OB or midwife specifically recommends a different form, or for people who tolerate multivitamins well and don't have major chronic issues and are not stacking multiple folate-heavy products, or in situations where cost and access are major limiting factors. So from a mental health and integrative perspective, I'm more cautious when there's a complex psychiatric history, chronic inflammation, or strong sensitivity to supplements, or if the person is already getting a lot of folic acid from fortified foods plus multiple vitamins, because there's concern for that unmetabolized folic acid due to genetic factors or a history of paradoxical reactions to high-dose folic acid or Mega B formulas. You see, in those cases, I will often look at either folinic acid or methylfolate instead, with a big emphasis on dose and cofactors. So let's move on to folinic acid, which is considered the gentle middle child. It's also known as 5-formyl-THF or leucovorin in prescription form. Now, folinic acid is a reduced activated form of folate because it bypasses DHFR completely and sits a bit upstream of methylfolate and can be converted into different folate derivatives used for DNA synthesis and methylation. Now, it enters into that pathway where it turns into 5,10-methylene THF, which can go toward nucleotide synthesis for DNA repair and tissue healing, or get converted downstream into methylfolate, which then needs methylation. So an important point here is that folinic acid does not bypass MTHFR. If MTHFR is significantly reduced, you can still bottleneck getting all the way to methylfolate, but you're giving the body a more flexible pool of active folate to work with, and you are avoiding that DHFR speed limit. And clinical uses for folinic acid in medicine is used conventionally as rescue therapy after high doses of methotrexate, treatment in certain megaloblastic anemias, and part of some oncology regimens. It's also an option in some cases of cerebral folate deficiency and certain autism protocols. And in nutritional psychiatry, it's increasingly used as the calmer alternative to aggressive methylfolate. And what the research suggests is that there are some clinical data comparing folinic acid and methylfolate that show that both forms can raise folate and lower homocysteine. And in some genotypes like MTHFR CT, so heterozygous, folinic acid may reduce homocysteine more efficiently than methylfolate in certain settings. Now, we don't have mountains of psychiatric randomized controlled trials here, But at the biochemical and clinical level, folinic acid clearly works without driving methylation as hard as high-dose methylfolate would. And people with MTHFR variants plus slow COMT and MAOA plus HNMT or VDR issues are much more likely to say, every time I take methylated B vitamins or methylfolate, I feel awful. And for those people, folinic acid is that Goldilocks option. It replenishes folate stores, supports homocysteine and methylation more gradually. And it doesn't slam the accelerator on SAMe and catecholamine production the way that big doses of methylfolate can. And when folinic acid might be a good choice, and when I start thinking about folinic acid, is when there are MTHFR variants, but the person reacts to methylfolate with anxiety, insomnia, or mood swings, and their genetic reports show slow COMT or MAOA plus histamine or VDR issues, and the nervous system is clearly sensitive. Now, there are concerns about high folinic acid intake or unmetabolized folic acid, but this doesn't mean that folinic acid is for COMT people and methylfolate is for MTHFR people. It just means that your whole methylation picture plus your symptoms matter far more than any single gene variant. So, next, let's move on to methylfolate, which is the direct methyl donor. Methylfolate is also known as 5-MTHF, and it's the form that gets all the hype. So, what is methylfolate? It's actually the main active methyl donating form of folate in circulation, and it's directly used by MTR and B12 to convert homocysteine to methionine into SAMe, and it completely bypasses MTHFR, which is why it's so popular for people with the MTHFR variants, especially those homozygous TT. And in people with that variant, the homozygous TT, methylfolate can help bypass their reduced MTHFR activity and support homocysteine and methylation more efficiently. But if MTR and MTRR are sluggish, or B12 is low, adding lots of methylfolate can actually create a traffic jam where folate is there, but homocysteine can't move efficiently. And this is where people may feel worse. And unlike folic acid and folinic acid, methylfolate actually has several randomized control trials in psychiatry. And in doses around 15 milligrams of L-methylfolate, added onto SSRIs and treatment-resistant depression, this improved response and remission rates compared with placebo. And some analysis suggests that it may be particularly helpful in people with higher inflammation, higher BMI, or folate pathway variants. And those are pharmacologic doses, not little 400 microgram doses. The downside is too much gas. Clinically, a lot of people can experience increased anxiety or panic, insomnia, racing thoughts, or just feeling amped up, having irritability, headaches, or mood swings. And this is more likely if they also have the COMT gene, MAOA, where dopamine and norepinephrine and even serotonin can hang around longer. It can also be more common in those with histamine issues because of HNMT variants or mast cell type symptoms. And for those people who jump straight to high doses like that 5 to 15 milligrams instead of starting low and titrating. It can also happen when B12, B2, B6, magnesium, choline, and glycine are not supported. So, methylfolate is powerful and can be incredibly helpful, especially under supervision, but it's not automatically safer or more natural just because it bypasses MTHFR. It's more like installing a turbocharger on your methylation engine. So, when methylfolate might be appropriate, could be for documented low serum folate or RBC folate or elevated homocysteine, especially with that MTHFR TT variant, when used with a knowledgeable clinician. Can also be very helpful with treatment-resistant depression, where pharmacologic dose L-methylfolate is used as a targeted adjunct to antidepressants. Can also be very helpful in individuals who have already tolerated gentler forms and B vitamins and want to carefully experiment with a low-dose methylfolate product. And in almost all cases, I would rather start with low doses. For example, 400 micrograms to 800 micrograms and move slowly instead of jumping straight to 7.5 or 15 milligrams just because a lab report mentioned MTHFR. So here are some practical takeaways. So let's go ahead and land this plane with some practical guidance. So food first. Prioritize natural folate from leafy greens, legumes, asparagus, avocados, and liver, because these come packed with other nutrients that support methylation and detox. Also, watch for folate stacking because it's easy to accidentally hit very high doses when you combine a multivitamin, a methylated B formula, a prenatal vitamin, and a separate methylated product. Also, remember that sensitive brains often react more to the total load than to the specific form. And also test, don't guess when possible. Look at your homocysteine, check your B12 and folate levels, and even sometimes methylmalonic acid. And layer that with your genetic data. So what is your MTHFR, your MTR, your MTRR, your MTHFD1, COMT, MAOA, HNMT, VDR, etc.? What are your genes telling us? And then, most importantly, pay attention to how you actually feel on different forms and doses, because that is probably the most important thing to be aware of. Here are my final thoughts to sum it all up. Folic acid is the public health workhorse with a strong data for pregnancy, but in high doses over time, it can leave that unmetabolized folic acid that may compete with active folate for transport. Where folinic acid is often the calm, flexible middle option, it bypasses DHFR, it supports both DNA repair and methylation, and is often better tolerated in genetically sensitive, anxious, or histamine-prone people. Where methylfolate is a powerful methyl donor that can help mood and homocysteine when used wisely, but it needs respect. It needs cofactor support and a strategy, especially if your downstream genes run slow. So, if you'd like help decoding your own genes and figuring out which folate forms fit your brain and your body, I do offer genetic-based mental health coaching to look at your methylation, neurotransmitter, and inflammation genes, then build a personalized nutrition and lifestyle roadmap around that. And if you're interested, you'll find a link in the description to learn more. And remember, your genes are not your destiny, but they are really useful data. And the magic happens when you combine them with good skills, good science, and a little bit of curiosity. So, as always, I thank you for watching. I wish you well on your mental health care journey, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.